The Book of the Cave of Treasures, a history of the Patriarchs and the Kings, their successors, from the creation to the Crucifixion of Christ. Translated from the Syriac text of the British Museum manuscripts, ad 25875 by Sir E.A. Wallis Budge, KT. Sometime keeper of Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities, British Museum, corresponding member of the Academy of Sciences, Lisbon, and corresponding member of the Philosophical Society of America, London, the Religious Tract Society, Manchester, Madrid, Lisbon, Budapest, 1927. Contents and bibliography. Preface. The present volume contains a complete translation of the Syriac text of the compendious history of the world from the creation to the crucifixion of our Lord Jesus the Christ, which is commonly known as ârath Gazzê, or the Cave of Treasures. In the Syriac title, the composition of the work is attributed to Ephraim Syriac, i.e. Ephraim Cyrus, or Ephraim the Syrian, who was born at Nisibis, and that's questionable, soon after AD 306 and died in 373, but is now generally believed that the form in which we now have it is not older than the 6th century. An edition of the Syriac text and an Arabic version of it, together with a German translation, were published by Bezold. It's got it in German there. Die Schatzholle, Munich, 1883-86. But this work is scarce and is little known in England. The German translation was made from an eclectic text constructed from at least 3 manuscripts, which varied in age and accuracy and general literary value. The translation given in the following pages has been made from the best, in the opinion of Wallis Budge, we believe, of all the known manuscripts, namely British Museum MS ad 25875. See Wright Catalogue, Volume 3, page 1064. This manuscript contains 12 complete works, all of which were written in a fine Nestorian hand, or someone from the Apostolic Church of the East, erroneously called the Nestorian Church. It had been said that he was the founder. He was not. By the priest Homo, the son of the priest Daniel, a native of Al-Kush, a very ancient town which lies about 20 miles north of Mosul, Nineveh, in the year of the Greeks 2020 i.e. AD. It's probably Cash or Kush with a C. I'm not too sure on that one though. It's Kush in Mesopotamia, that area of those lands. A very ancient town which lies about 20 miles north of Mosul, Nineveh, in the year of the Greeks 2020 i.e. AD 1709. It was written at the expense of the priest Joseph, the son of Hormizd, a native of Hordaphne in the district of Armedia, for the Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary in that place. When the author read through the manuscript in 1885, whilst preparing his edition of the Book of the Bee, he was convinced that Homo, the scribe, was a very learned man, and the marginal notes which he added to his copy showed that he was at once a capable and an understanding editor of Syriac texts. When the printed edition of the Syriac text of the Cave of Treasures appeared in 1886, the author was surprised to find that Homo's text had not been made the foundation of the work. While the author was in Al-Kush in 1890 to 91 collecting manuscripts for the British Museum, he found there some of Homo's descendants, and of these 1 or 2 were professional scribes. They possessed a few ancient Syriac manuscripts, and from one of them the author had copies made of the Cave of Treasures and the Book of the Bee. On his return to England, he collated the copy of the former work with the British Museum Codex and found that the text only varied in a few minor points. There are a few mistakes in the British Museum MS or manuscript, and one or two places a few words are omitted or struck out or left out. But as a whole, it contains the text of the Cave of Treasures in as perfect form as ever we are likely to get, and therefore the author made the translation printed herein from it. A text of this kind might be annotated to almost any extent, but the author had limited his notes to pointing out parallels in the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Adam and Eve, and the Book of the Bee, and other cognate works. These are printed within square brackets immediately following the passage in the Cave of Treasures which they illustrate. In the short bibliography which follows the translation will be found the names of a number of books and of editions of text which those who are interested in the literary history of the Cave of Treasures will find necessary for useful work. The author also added a translation of the Testament of Adam, a popular apocryphal work which is based upon the Syriac Cave of Treasures and upon legends derived from books of a similar and perhaps allied character. The ancient tradition, which asserts that the Cave of Treasures was written in the 4th century of our era, is supported by the general contents of the work. These reproduce Ephraim's quaint and sometimes fanciful methods of exegesis and his hatred of the he didn't like the Semites, and supply many examples of his methods in religious argument with which we are familiar with from other writings. We may notice too his pride in the antiquity of the Syriac language. That it was written in Mesopotamia by a Syrian, there is no doubt, and if we reject Ephraim as its author, we are bound to admit that the author, or perhaps later editor, belonged to the school of Ephraim. Whichever view be taken is immaterial, for the book certainly contains a mass of historical information which can only have been derived from pre-Christian Hebrew works or from post-Christian chronologies and histories written in Greek. The writers of such Greek works derived some of their information at first or second hand from documents originally written in cuneiform. Of the general historical character of the Cave of Treasures there is no doubt, and it is this fact which gives it such importance for the history of the Hebrew Patriarchs and for early Christian history and the Christian faith. This view was maintained by the eminent scholars Dolman, Nildeke, Shachar, Wright, Bigold and others during the last century, and it was firmly held by Christians in Mesopotamia, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Nubia and Abyssinia, I think that's Ethiopia, for the 14th centuries preceding. On the historical facts which formed the framework of the Cave of Treasures, the pious author or editor grafted a whole series of legends, many of which deserve the descriptions of idle stories and vain fables, which have been applied to them by Asimani and the older European theologians. The reader, having perused them, will readily understand that such legends, containing as they do garbled history, facts and anachronisms, are neither accepted nor endorsed by any member of the Committee of the Religious Tract Society or by the author himself. These legends were inserted with the view of making the Cave of Treasures a sort of religious wonder book which would appeal to the vivid and credulous imaginations of Christian natives in almost every country of the Near East, and religious wonder books were intended by the authors and editors to amuse as well as to instruct. The Cave of Treasures possesses an apocryphal character, it is true, but the support which its contents give to the Christian faith, and the light which the historical portions of it throw on early but the support which its contents give to the Christian faith and the light which the historical portions of it throw on early Christian history entitle it to a very high place among the apocryphal books of the Old and the New Testament. These facts have induced the Committee of the Religious Tract Society to order the publication of this, the first English translation of the Cave of Treasures. And then he goes on to thank the trustee of British Museum and so forth. E.A. Wallis Budge, London WC1, July 30, 1927. Introduction. The sources of the Cave of Treasures and its contents. In the centuries immediately preceding the Christian era, certain professional Jewish scribes composed a number of works which may well be described as historical romances, and which were based on the histories of the Patriarchs and others as found in the four main divisions of the text of the Hebrew Bible. There is little doubt that most of these works were written either in Hebrew or in the Palestinian vernacular of the period. One of the oldest of such works appears to be the Book of Jubilees, see page 3, also called the Lesser Genesis and the Apocalypse of Moses, which derives its name from the fact that the periods of time described in it are jubilees, i.e. each period contains 49 years. It is more or less a commentary on the Book of Genesis. That a version of this book existed in Greek is proved by the quotations given by Epiphanius, Bishop of Salamis in Cyprus, born about AD 320 and died in 403 or 404. In his work on heresies, chapter 39, the author claimed boldly that his work contains the revelations which were made to Moses by the command of God by the archangel Michael, who is frequently described as the angel of the face. The book is not wholly original, for it contains narratives and traditions derived from the works of earlier writers, and some of the legends appear to have been taken from early Babylonian sources. The Hebrew or Aramaean original is lost, and the complete work is only found in Ethiopic, in which language it is known as Kufali, or sections. The Ethiopic translation was made from the Greek. Okay, so the Ethiopian version was made from the Greek. Another pre-Christian work, also written by a Jew, is the Book of Enoch, which exists now in a more or less complete form, only in the Ethiopic translation, which was made from the Greek. Again, made from the Greek. This work is quoted by St. Jude, 55:14-15, and there's little doubt that for some 3 or 4 centuries its authority, both among the Jews and the Christians of the 1st and 2nd centuries of our era, was very great. Whether the Book of Enoch, is made known to us by the Ethiopic version, truly represents the original Hebrew work, is fairly open to doubt. In fact, it seems certain that it does not. It contains a series of fragments or parts of works of somewhat similar character, which has been strung together and then added to by writers of different schools of religious thought at different periods, or different eras, ages, right? In some parts of it, traces have been found of beliefs which are neither Jewish nor Christian, see page 5. From time to time during the early centuries of the Christian era, apocryphal works dealing with our Lord and His apostles and disciples appeared, and though they were written by Christians, they contain many legends and traditions which the authors borrowed from the works of earlier Jewish and Christian writers. Such works were very popular among the Christian communities of Egypt and Syria, for the thirst for information about our Lord and His life and works and the adventures and successes of the apostles in Africa, Western Asia, India and other countries was very great. Side by side with this apocryphal literature, there appeared works in Egypt and Syria which dealt with Old Testament history and endeavoured to explain its difficulties. But though patriarch and bishop and priest read the scriptures and the commentaries on them to the people and instructed their congregations orally on every possible occasion, there was much in the ancient Jewish religion out of which many of the aspects of the Christian religion had developed, which the laity did not understand. On the one hand, the unlettered Christian folk heard the Jews denouncing Christ and his followers, and on the other, their teachers taught them that Christ was the descendant of King David and Abraham, and that the great and essential truths and mysteries of the Christian religion were foreshadowed by events which had taken place in the lives of the Jewish patriarchs. Some of the fathers of the church in the 5th and 6th centuries wrote sermons and dissertations on the birth of our Lord, His baptism, temptation, passion and death and resurrection, and proved by quotations from the prophets that the Son of the Virgin Mary was indeed the Messiah and the Saviour of the world. But copies of these works were not multiplied for the use of their congregations, most of the members of which were unlettered folk. They weren't highly educated, right? They didn't have that opportunity to be highly educated, and or maybe they couldn't read or write. And the influence of all written discourses was much circumscribed in consequence. The great monastic institutions possessed copies of the Old and New Testaments written in Greek and Syriac, but these were not available for study by the laity in general, and it is probably that only well-to-do people could afford to have copies of the books of the Bible made for their private use. Yeah, so maybe the common folk didn't have these copies. They weren't available to them. Maybe you had to pay an arm and a leg to get them. Okay, or only special people allowed them. Okay. Thus the circumstances of the time made it necessary that the fathers of the church, or some of the learned scribes, should compile comprehensive works on the history of God's dealings with man as described in the Old Testament, and show the true relationship of the Christian religion to the religion of the Hebrew patriarchs, and that to kings of Israel and Judah. There is little doubt that many such works were written, and that their authors based their histories on the writings of their predecessors, or those that came before them, and that Christian writers borrowed largely from the Hebrew Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, as well as the histories and chronicles, which were then extant in Greek. They are available all around in Greek. Right? Some of the latter works, i.e. those in Greek, were written by men who had access to information, which was derived from Babylonian and Assyrian histories, written in cuneiform, and thanks to their labours of Assyriologists, the statements based on such information can, in many cases, be checked and verified. Further reference to this point will be made later on, somewhere within this book. The oldest of the Christian works on the history of God's dealings with man from Adam to Christ is probably the Book of Adam and Eve. See page 9, which in its original form was written sometime in the 5th or 6th century of our era. Its author unknown. So, yeah, it was written later on. Okay, then you would term that as pseudepigraphic, because you might know when it was actually written or thereabouts, but you don't know who the author was. He's unknown, remains unknown. As there is no doubt whatever that the writer of the Cave of Treasures borrowed largely from the Book of Adam and Eve, or from the same source from which its writer derived his information. It is necessary to give here a brief description of the object and comments of this work. The oldest manuscript of the Book of Adam and Eve known to us is in Arabic, and is not older than the 11th century. But many of the legends and traditions found in it are identical in form and expression with those found in the annals of Sa'id bin al-Batrik or Eutychius, Patriarch of Alexandria, AD 933 to 939, and the 8 books of mysteries written by Clement about AD 750, and in the Cave of Treasures, which is now generally thought to have been written or perhaps re-edited in the 6th century. The Arabic version of the Book of Adam and Eve contains 2 main sections. The first contains a history of the creation, which claims to be a translation of the Hexameron of Epiphanius, bishop in Cyprus. In it are given an account of the work of the 6 days of creation, the Vision of Gregory concerning the fall of Satan, a description of the 4 heavens, the creation of man, the temptation of Eve, and the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise. The title Book of the Aximaris would lead one to suppose that the whole work was devoted to the creation, but it is not. For the second section contains the history of the departure of Adam and Eve from paradise and the arrival in the Cave of Treasures by the command of God. The writer of the Book of Adam and Eve meant that the 2 sections to form a complete work. The first shows how Adam fell, and the second tells us how God fulfilled the promise which he made to Adam more than once, that after 5.5 weeks, i.e. 5,500 years, he would send a Redeemer into the world who would save both Adam and his descendants from the destruction which his sin in paradise had incurred. The writer of the book gives the history of Adam and Eve in full, adding as he progresses in his work the various legends and traditions which he found in the works of his predecessors, or those before him. This plan he follows until he comes to the flood and on to the time of Melchizedek. But having settled this king in Salem, the rest of his work becomes a bold recital of genealogies, only really interspersed with explanations and generalizations. Whether he was a Jacobite or Nestorian, there is nothing to show in his work, and it seems that he had a dislike for the Semites, not because of their religion, but because they had crucified Christ, and had also, in his opinion, promulgated a false genealogy of Joseph and the Virgin Mary. Of the author of the book of Adam and Eve, nothing is known. Some have thought that he was a pious and orthodox Egyptian who wrote in Coptic and derived the legends and traditions which he incorporated in his book from documents written in Greek or Syriac, or from native works of the Coptic Church. Dr. W. Meyer discovered and published in the Handlungen of the Bavarian Academy, BD 14.3 ABTH, two versions of the life of Adam and Eve, one in Greek and the other in Latin. The Greek version is called the I can't read that. It looks like it's in Greek. Apocalypsis Adam, probably the Apocalypse of Adam. Yeah, Apocalypse of Adam. In the Latin, Vita Adai et Evae. Their content differs materially, and neither version can be regarded as derived from the book of Adam and Eve described above. Like the book of Jubilees and the book of Enoch, the book of Adam and Eve exists in a complete form only in Ethiopic, where it is called Gazzê, Adam wa Hewan, i.e. the fight of Adam and Eve against Satan. The best known text is given in the manuscript in the British Museum, Oriental number 751. See right catalogue number, looks like it's got 120 there, or maybe it's 320. Pages 213, which was written in the reign of Kafta, king of Abyssinia, 1721 to 1730. It was one of the chief authorities used by Trump. It's got two P's here though, not Donald Trump, in the preparation of his edition of the Ethiopic text, which appeared at Munich in 1880. Well, supposedly Trump was European. He was born in Germany. He's a German, so maybe it's an ancient relative of his, but it's got two P's here. Okay. The forms of several of the biblical names indicate that the Ethiopic translation was made from Arabic. Translations of the complete book have been made by Doman, Das Christliche Edinburgh, Guttingen 1853, and Milan, the Book of Adam and Eve, London 1882. The discovery of the existence of the book called the Cave of Treasures we owe to Asimani, the famous author of the catalogues of Oriental manuscripts in the Vatican Library, which he printed in Bibliotheca Orientalis in 4 thick volumes folio. In volume 2, among them is one, the title of which he translates by Spelunca Thesaurorum. He read the manuscript carefully and saw that it contained the history of a period of 5,000 years, i.e. from the creation of Adam to the birth of Christ, and that it was a historical chronicle based upon the scriptures. He says that fables are found in it everywhere, and especially in that part of it which treats of the antediluvian patriarchs and the genealogy of Christ and his mother. He mentions that the Patriarch Eutychius also describes a cave of treasures in which gold, frankincense and myrrh were laid up, and refers to the Portentosa Feminarum Nomina, who were the ancestresses of Christ. No attempt was made to publish the Syriac text. In fact, little attention was paid to it until Dillman began to study the book of Adam and Eve in connection with it. And then he showed in Ewald's Jahrbuchern, BD 5, 1853, that the contents of whole sections of the book of the Cave of Treasures in Syriac and the book of Adam and Eve in Ethiopic were identical. And soon after this, Dillman and others noticed that an Arabic manuscript in the Vatican, number 39, see Assimani Bibliography, something about the Orient, page 281, contained a version of the Cave of Treasures which had clearly been made from the Syriac. In 1853, Bezold published a translation of the Syriac text of the Cave of Treasures made from 3 manuscripts. The Schatzhole, Leipzig, 1883, and 5 years later published the Syriac text of it accompanied by the text of the Arabic version. In 1885, the author was engaged in preparing an edition of the Syriac text of the Debhuritha, i.e. the Bee, the book of the Bee, I suppose, a book of gleanings composed by the Nestorian Bishop Solomon of Basra, i.e. al-Basra, about AD 1222. While making the English translation of this work, the author found that the Bee contained many of the legends and traditions which appeared in the Cave of Treasures, and to show how greatly the Nestorian Bishop Solomon had borrowed from the work of the Jacobite author of the Cave of Treasures, in the earlier part of his work, the author printed several lengthy extracts from the Syriac from the fine manuscript in the British Museum. With English translations, see the Book of the Bee, the Syrian text with an English translation, Oxford 1886, and its Daughter Oxoniensia, Semitic Series, Volume 1, Part 3. And these were thought to emphasize the general importance of the Cave of Treasures. The author of the book, which commonly known as the Cave of Treasures, called his work the Book of the Order of the Succession of Generations, or families, the families being those of the Patriarchs and Kings of Israel and Judah, and his chief object was to show how Christ was descended from Adam. He did not accept the genealogical tables which were commonly in use among his unlearned fellow Christians, because he was convinced that all the ancient tablets of genealogies which the Jews had possessed were destroyed by fire by the captain of Nebuchadnezzar's army immediately after the capture of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. The Jews promptly constructed new tables of genealogies which both Christians and Arabs regarded as fictitious. The Arabs were as deeply interested in the matter as the Christians, for they were descended from Abraham, and the genealogy of the descendants of Hagar and Ishmael was of the greatest importance of their ancestors, that we owe the Arabic translations of the Cave of Treasures. The Nubians and Egyptians were also interested in such matters, for the former were the descendants of Cush. Okay? Cush with a C. Okay, here it's got a K. And the latter, the descendants of Mizraim. So this Cush could be a different person, but we believe it's Cush with a C. Okay. And the latter, the descendants of Mizraim, the Egyptians. Right? It's in the genealogies in Genesis 11, we believe. And Ham, usually spelled with a K in front, but that's silent, so it looks like Cam, but it's Ham, was a great ancestor of both these nations. And it is clear that Syrians, Arabs, Egyptians and Ethiopians regarded the Cave of Treasures as an authoritative work on their respective pedigrees. So you get these Sarnetta US what they say Kemet followers. Okay, Ham in the Bible is spelled K, capital K H A M, but it's silent. It's pronounced Ham. So they have the same word in Egyptian, okay, Kham, and their that word is also silent. The K is also silent, so it's Ham. So they're not Kemites or Camites; they are Hamites. If they are descendants of Noah's son Ham, with a silent K, Kham, or Ham. They're Hamites, not Kemites or Kemites, okay, or Kemetans, however you prefer to say it. So they're wrong there. Those who profess to know that language don't know that basic. Okay, it goes on and on about the particular origins of the book and so forth. And it gets down to the nitty-gritty with Adam. When Adam and Eve left paradise, they went into a strange land and were terrified at the stones and sand which they saw before them and became like dead folk. Then God sent his word to them, and he told them that after 5.5 weeks, i.e. 5,500 years, he would come in the flesh and save man. So what that's talking about, his word, is the Muta, or Yeshua Mashiach, Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God. That he would come 5,500 years later, God incarnate in the flesh. Here it is here. He would come in the flesh and save man. He had already made them this promise in paradise when they stood by the tree of forbidden fruit. The cave of treasures was a dark and gloomy place, and over it hung a huge rock. And when Adam and Eve entered it, they were sorely troubled. God sent the birds and beasts and reptiles to Adam and ordered them to be friendly to him and his descendants, and every kind of creature came to him except the serpent. In their grief, Adam and Eve tried to drown themselves, but an angel was sent to drag them out of the water which flowed from the roots of the tree of life. And the Word restored them to life, or the Son of God restored them to life. Whilst they were living there, God taught them how to wash their bodies and told them what to eat, and from the roots of the tree of life and the whilst they were living there, God taught them how to wash their bodies and told them what to eat and drink, and made known to them the use of wheat, and showed them how to clothe themselves with the skins of beasts and other essentials of civilization. There was no night in paradise, and when the sun set and night fell on Adam, his terror was great. At length God told him that the night was made for the beast and himself to rest in, and explained to him the divisions of time, years, months, days, etc. During the period of the abode of Adam and Eve in the cave, Satan came and tempted them 14 times, but whenever God saw that they were in danger of life or limb through the devilish wiles of the evil one, he sent an angel to deliver them and put the devil to flight. Adam suffered sorely from the heat of the sun, which caused him to fall down a precipice, and maybe that's some sort of cliff face around, and wound himself so severely that his blood flowed out of his body onto the ground. When God raised him up, he took stones and built an altar, and having wiped up his blood with leaves and collected the dust which was saturated with blood, he offered both the leaves and the dust as an offering to God, who accepted this Adam's first offering, and sent a fire to consume it. And as Adam shed his blood and died through his wounds which God healed, so did the Word, or the Son of God, shed his blood and suffer death. Thus the blood offering originated with Adam. Okay, so this supposed book says, when God saw that Adam was terrified by the darkness of the night, he sent Michael into Judea and told him to bring back tablets of gold. And when they arrived, God set them in a cave to lighten the darkness of the night therein. And God sent Gabriel into them in the cave to lighten the darkness of the night therein. And God sent Gabriel into paradise to fetch incense, and Raphael to bring myrrh from the same place. and these symbolic substances being placed in the cave, Adam was comforted. Because the cave contained these precious substances, it was called the Cave of Treasures. A little later, God permitted figs to be brought to Adam from paradise and taught Adam and Eve to cook food on the fire, which was brought to them out of the hand of the fiery angel who stood at the entrance to paradise, holding a fiery sword in his hand. So they couldn't go back there, right? Touch the tree of life. As Adam could not obtain a supply of blood to maintain the blood offering, he laid upon the altar outside the cave an offering made of wheat, presumably a loaf of cake baked in hot ashes, and God accepted it and sent a fire to consume it, the Holy Ghost being present. And God said that he would, when he came down upon the earth, make it to be his flesh, which was to be offered up continually upon an altar for forgiveness and mercy. So that's supposed to be the communion bread, right? And an angel took a part of the offering with a pair of fire tongs and administered it to Adam and Eve. Thereupon Adam established the custom of offering the wheat offering thrice in the week, viz. On the 1st, 4th and 6th days of the week. After Adam had lived 223 days in the cave, God sent his angels to tell him to take Eve to wife, or make her his wife, and to give the gold plates in the cave to Eve as a betrothal gift or a wedding gift. Adam obeyed the divine command, and in due course Eve bore him twins, Cain and his sister Lua. I wonder if that's Lilith. In the cave under the huge rock which Satan once hurled at Adam, wishing to kill him. Later Eve again brought forth twins, Abel and his sister Archlemia. The remainder of the first section of the book of Adam and Eve records the story of the murder of Abel by Cain, and tells how the earth rejected thrice Abel's body, which Cain tried to bury in it. It is now generally thought that the Syriac work, which is called the Cave of Treasures, was written in the 6th century of our era, and in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, this view may be accepted. In the title it is attributed to Ephraim the Syrian, and this indicates that the Syrians themselves were prepared to believe that it was written early in the 4th century. For this great writer died AD 373. Even if this attribution be wrong, it is important as suggesting that, if not written by Ephraim himself, one of his disciples or some member of a school may have been the author of the book. Where the writer lived is not known, but it is most probable that it was written in Edessa or Nisibis. In any case, it must have been written in Mesopotamia, and the writer was certainly a Syrian Jacobite who was proud of his native language. Thus, having spoken of the migration of his people to Shinar or Sumer, he says they all sat down there, and from Adam until the present time they were all of one speech and one language. They all speak this language, that is to say, Syriac, which is Aramaean. Okay, so Syriac is Syriac, which is Aramaean, and this language is the king of all languages. So that's the very first language, right? They're both the kings of all languages. Now, ancient writers have erred in that they said that the Hebrew was the first language, and in this matter they have mingled an ignorant mistake in their writing. So anyone out there says Hebrew was the first language, according to this, is incorrect. They've made an ignorant mistake. Well, yeah, okay, you're looking at the original ancient very old Tab Ashrit, Brita, Aramaic, okay, and the Brita, translated into the nearest English equivalent. Genesis in English, chapter 11, I believe, where it shows the bloodline prior to Adam, and there's the sons of Noah, Japheth's older brother. He had a son called Arpachshad, who then had a son called Shelah, who then had a son called Eber, and this guy became the father of the Hebrew, or the Hebrews. But there it doesn't indicate that they spoke Hebrew. Okay, they probably spoke Akkadian in that era. plus they're in the Ur of Chaldea, or Chaldee, so the city of Chaldea, or Chaldee, so they probably would have spoke Chaldean as well. It doesn't say anything about them speaking Hebrew, because they were a people. Awer, A-W-E-R, or A-W-E-R, or A-V-E-R in the Hebrew. A people who crossed over. They made a journey. They migrated to somewhere else. They went over the Euphrates, across the Euphrates, into the land of Canaan, which is promised by God to Abraham and his people. So it's not a language, it's a people called the Awer. Those who crossed over, those who made a passage, those who made a journey. So that would have been the official language, Aramaic. Or else they spoke the original ancient, very old, sacred scribal language of God, or Old Tongue, Lishana Artika Sapreya, that Adam and Eve spoke. Or God spoke to Adam and Eve with that in the Garden of Eden. For all the languages that are in the world are derived from Syriac, possibly the Aramaic, because Syriac's the derivative, and all the languages and books are mingled with it, page 132. And in another place he says that Pilate did right in writing the inscription which was placed on the cross in Greek, Latin and Hebrew only, and that he did not add a translation of it in Syriac because no Syrian played any part in the crucifixion of our Lord, page 230. Yeah, that above him translated into the nearest English, supposedly from the is it something like Eloi, Eloi, or LL, Eli, Eli, etc. That's correct. Maybe not the name L, because apparently that was scribed wrong or scripted wrong when they're in Canaan. That was a pagan god. Okay, it's been verified by a Greek theologian, a lady with long black hair, etc. As a pagan god. The real name of God was El, E-I-L. And they messed it up, they got it wrong. Scribed it or scripted it wrong. So, they were all speaking that one language up until that point of the Tower of Babel. So, you had Babylonia, but there's no Babylonian spoken there because they were speaking the one language. And it's not until God comes down and mingles with the people and says, look, they're doing this, if they can do this, building this tower, they can do anything, they're capable of doing anything, so let's confuse them by giving them different languages. So when the people had these different languages, one would say something to another one and he goes, I don't understand what the hell you're saying, you're talking Babel. Okay, it's just blah, 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 like that, can't understand what the hell the other guy's saying, so they called it Babel, which became Babylon. Because, you know, some people that talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and don't stop, you say, oh gee, he's babbling on again. And in another place he says that Pilate did right in writing the inscription which is placed on the cross in Greek, Latin and Hebrew only, and that he did not add a translation of it in Syriac because no Syrian played any part in the crucifixion of our Lord, page 230. And Abgar the Black, king of Edessa, wanted to go and take Jerusalem and slay the Jews who had crucified him. And as Bezold pointed out, the name of Noah's wife, Haikal Bath-Namos, and the names of several other women appear to be of Syrian origin. The writers boast that Syriac is the oldest of all languages is probably not strictly true. Yeah, because that's a derivative from the Aramaic. But there is no doubt in the author's opinion that it is one of the oldest of the northern Semitic dialects. This is proved by the inscriptions on the Cappadocian tablets which have been acquired during the last few years by the British Museum. These tablets were written in Assyria in metals and textile fabrics, the latter coming from the Volga Daga and maybe just just say Daga, former from the great cotton growing districts which lay along the Habur. And there's a K there, that would be silent, it would probably be Habur. The Cuneiform texts of a large number of these commercial documents and letters have been published by Sidney Smith. Cuneiform texts from Cappadocian tablets, London 1921 and following years. And in part 1 he has given pages on 6 and 7 a long list of words used in connection with the weaving industry, which can be paralleled in Syriac by words of precisely the same roots. And this will probably be found to apply to the other objects of daily life, for the Syriac writers of the early centuries of the Christian era knew of hundreds of words used in these affairs, or the affairs and business of daily life, which they had no opportunity to use when writing the lives of saints, commentaries on the scriptures, and works of a purely religious character. Of the subsequent history of the Syriac cave treasures, very little was known. The knowledge of parts of it made its way into Armenia soon after the book was written, and more than one translation of it was made into Arabic, probably in the 7th and 8th centuries. In connection with the Arabic translations, it must be noted that they all end with the account of the cruelties perpetuated by Archelaus and Salome after the death of Herod. See Bezal's text, page 247. The last paragraph of the Arabic text mentions the 12 apostles who went about with Christ and refers to his baptism by John the Baptist, and says that he lived on the earth 33 years and then ascended into heaven. Thus, for the last 26 pages of the Syriac text, there is no equivalent in the book of Adam and Eve, the section of the Syriac for which there is no equivalent in the Arabic version or translation. And the same is substantially true for the Ethiopic text of the book of Adam and Eve, the section of the Syriac for which there is no rendering in Arabic or Ethiopic contains a series of statements addressed by the author to his brother Nemesius. It is possible that these have been added to the work by a later writer, but the author Budge did not think so, as they do not deal with matters of genealogy and do treat almost exclusively of the life of Christ and his crucifixion. It is probable that they failed to interest the Arab translator and he left them untranslated. It may be, however, that the complete Arabic translation has not come down to us. Okay, so that's really interesting. It does go further into the book of Adam, we believe, giving more detail. Goes on to talk about a wind flood, not mentioned in the Bible. You might like to read it for yourself. We can leave the link to it at the bottom of this video. There are other versions of covers, but that's for the people with reading and printing disabilities, apparently, at this particular website. Okay, it's got a note here about Abgar the Black, king of Edessa, wished himself to pass over and go to Palestine and see with his own eyes all which Christ was doing, but because he was not able to pass through the country of the Romans, and apparently the guy had leprosy as well, or gout, which was not his, lest this cause should call forth bitter enmity or dislike between both of them, right? Because Rome wasn't his country and Rome hadn't conquered it or something like that at that time. He wrote a letter and sent it to Christ by the hand of Hanan, the keeper of the archives. Phillips, The Doctrine of Adai, London 1876, page 3. So it mentions a supposed letter by King Akbar to Christ to ask him to come and heal him, but he couldn't because he was busy doing his father's work, apparently. Okay, and it has the Cave of Treasures, British Museum, manuscript ad 25A75, 25875 translation. The title of the works describes prayer. The first 1,000 years, Adam to Ârath, or Jared, the creation first day. In the beginning, on the first day, which was the holy first day of the week, the chief and firstborn of all the days, God created heavens and the earth, and the waters and the air, and the fire, and the hosts which are invisible, that is to say, the angels, archangels, thrones, lords, principalities, powers, cherubim and seraphim, and all the ranks and companies of spiritual beings, and the light and the night, and the daytime, and the gentle winds, and the strong winds, i.e. storms. All these were created on the first day. And on the first day, but see, notice here, it has a capital D, okay, not a small d, okay, a lowercase d. So what it might be saying there is, this is in God's creating period. So it could be an unfathomable, immeasurable period, era, eon, age, okay, a day, okay, not a lowercase d, indicating all done on a day of the week, or 6 days, or literal 6 days. And on the first day of the week, okay, here it's saying a week, okay, well, that would be incorrect, wouldn't it? If you have the Aramaic word, if Aramaic was the first language, okay, sorry, if a certain language was the first language, then it wouldn't be a week, would it? I mean, because it's infinite space. Peter says, in the beginning, as the beginner, the Son of God, or the Milter, the manifestation of God, that which was not revealed, and then was suddenly revealed, or later on revealed, God in the flesh, created the heavens and the earth. Okay? So, to God, it actually says there as well, it's got there explaining Euma, the Aramaic word Euma, which means immeasurable period, unfathomable period, era, eon, day with capital D. There's infinite space, okay? There's no time as such, so there wouldn't have been a week or any day of the week, lowercase d. So, as it has there in the Brita, Genesis in English, a capital D, meaning it's in God's immeasurable period, unfathomable period, where He created the heavens and the earth and so forth. One of the persons of the Trinity, okay, so it mentions the Trinity there, hovered over the waters. That is the Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit. That's what it's indicating. So it's stating there, the Trinity. So there's a Godhead, triune Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And through the hovering thereof over the, it's got fold 3b column 2, face of the waters were blessed as that they might become producers of offspring, and they became hot, and the whole nature of the waters glowed with heat, and the leaven of creation was united to them. As the mother bird maketh warm her young by the embrace of the closely covering wings, and young birds acquire form through the warmth of the heat which they derive from her, so through the operation of the Spirit of holiness, the Spirit, the Paraclete, the leaven of the breath of life was united to the waters when He hovered over them, the Spirit. Okay. Well, in Eastern mindset, the actual Spirit is known as she, okay, because it's a nurturer. And who's the better nurturer, male or female? But it's not saying it is a female. Okay, it's apparently there's no gender neuter in that particular language, the Aramaic. Note, according to Solomon, a Nestorian bishop of Paraf Mashan, or El Basra, a city on the right bank of the Shat al-Arab, about AD 1222, the creation of the heavens and the earth has been planned from everlasting in the immutable mind of God. He created the angels, He created 7 substances or natures in silence without voice, with heaven, earth, water, air, fire, the angels in darkness. The earth was plunged in the midst of the waters. Above the waters was air, and above the air was fire. Water was cold and moist, air is hot and moist. Fire was hot and dry, but it had no luminosity until the 4th day, with capital D, when the luminaries were created. The angels are divided into 9 classes and 3 orders. The upper order contains cherubim, seraphim, and thrones, and these are bearers of God's throne. The middle order contains lords, powers, and rulers. The lower order contains principalities, archangels, and angels. Compare the thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. So when they're speaking about in the Bible about we are not wrestling with flesh, we are wrestling with principalities and powers, possibly it's pointing at your lower level, lower nature, that wicked, evil lower nature. Okay, we're wrestling with that because these powers that be are of that, okay, of that lower order. Okay, possibly. Okay, compare the thrones or dominions or principalities or powers of Colossians 1:16. The cherubim are an intellectual motion. The seraphim are a fiery motion. The thrones are a fixed motion, and so forth. The angels are not self-existent beings. They were created. On the other hand, darkness is a self-existent nature or substance. Solomon of Al-Basra does not accept the view that the spirit which hovered over the waters was the Holy Spirit. See Book of the Bee, edited by Budge, chapters 1 to 7. And he goes on about creation, the second day. God makes the lower heaven, and so forth. Okay, and in the 6th day, and on the 6th day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, God formed man out of the dust and Eve from his rib. And on the 7th day, God rested from his labours, and it is called Sabbath. Okay, it's the 7th day with a capital D. So it's meaning it's a measurable period, unfathomable period, because there was no one yet, no human being to write it all down, record it. Okay, so think of this scripture where a day is like 1,000 years to God, or 1,000 years is a day to God. Think of it along those lines. Okay. Now the formation of ârath took place in this wise: on the 6th day, with capital T, which is the eve of the Sabbath, at the first hour of the day. Well, he basically sanctified it. It doesn't really say in your modern Bible that was the 7th day. Okay, it's just the day he had a rest, and then he blessed it. Okay. Now the formation of Adam took place in this wise: on the 6th day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, at the first hour of the day, when quietness was reigning over, file 4b, column 2, all the ranks of the angels and the host of heaven, God said, "Come ye," or come all of you, "let us make man in our image, and according to our likeness." Now by this word us, he maketh known concerning the glorious persons of the Trinity, or the Triunity. He makes it known through the 3 persons of that Trinity. Okay. And when the angels heard this utterance, they fell into a state of fear and trembling, and they said to one another, "A mighty miracle will be made manifest to us this day, that is to say, the likeness of God, our Maker." And they saw the right hand of God opened out flat and stretched out over the whole world, and all creatures were collected in the palm of his right hand. And they saw that he took from the whole mass of the earth 1 grain of dust, and from the whole nature of water 1 drop of water, and from all the air which is above 1 puff of wind, and from the whole nature of fire a little of its heat and warmth. And the angel saw that when these 4 feeble or inert materials were placed in the palm of his right hand, file column 1, that is to say cold and heat and dryness and moisture. God formed Adam. Now for what reason did God make Adam out of these four materials, unless it were to show that everything which is in the world should be in subordination to him through them? He took a grain from the earth in order that everything in nature which is formed of earth should be subject unto him, and a drop of water in order that everything which is in the seas and rivers should be his, and a puff of air, so that all kinds of creatures which fly in the air might be given unto him, in the heat of the fire, so that all the beings that are fiery in nature and the celestial host might be his helpers. And God formed man with his holy hands in his own image and likeness, and when the angels saw Adam's glorious appearance, they were greatly moved by the beauty thereof. And so forth. It's got a note here. The Jews consider that the words, "Come, let us make man," refer to God and the angels, but the fathers of the Syrian church understand that God refers to the three persons of the Trinity. Some fathers believe that Adam was formed on the morning of the sixth day outside paradise, but others think that the formation of Adam took place in the evening in paradise. Well, it says in the Brita or Genesis that he took Adam and he placed him in the sanctified or prior made holy part of Eden, paradise. According to some, paradise was created before the world, and according to others on the third day. But Hebraeus says that Adam was created on Friday of the first week of Nisan, April, the first month of the first year of the world. The Egyptian and Ethiopian churches have a tradition that the angels were not all created at the same time. The great archangel Michael, who is called the angel of the face, and all his rank of angels were created in the first hour of Friday, the priest in the second, etc., etc. But there was no days of the week at that particular time. It's in God's immeasurable period, unfathomable period. Day with a capital D, not a small or lowercase d, i.e. day of the week. And then you have the revolt of Satan and battle in heaven. The making of Eve. What does it say here? No, God did not make Eve of earth that she might not be considered something alien to or foreign to Adam in nature, and he did not take her from Adam's fore parts that she might not uplift herself against him, nor from his hind parts that he might not be accounted despicable, nor from his right side that she might not have preeminence over him, nor from his head that she might not seek authority over him, nor from his feet that she might not be trodden down and scorned in the eyes of her husband. But he took her from his left side, for the side is a place which unites and joins both front and back. Book of the Bee, chapter 14, and Bar Hebraeus Asa Gazzê. Further, God did not form Eve from Adam's head, that she might not carry her head proudly, nor from his eye, that she might not be curious, nor from his ear, that she might not be an eavesdropper, nor from his mouth, that she might not be gossiping, nor from his heart, that she might not be quarrelsome, nor from his hand, that she might not touch everything with her hand, nor from his feet, that she might not rove about Bereshith Rabbath on Genesis 2:23. Now Moses the prophet said that God planted a paradise in Eden and placed Adam there. Paradise was situated on Mount Eden, beyond the ocean, and it was filled with fruit-bearing trees, etc., etc. In New Zealand we have a place called Mount Eden, and no, that's not the place. It's very, very interesting. Goes into great detail about Satan, an attack on Adam and Eve, and Adam and Eve stay in paradise, and so forth. Adam's expulsion from paradise, and then the birth of Seth, Adam knew his wife again, and she brought forth Seth, the beautiful, a man mighty and perfect like unto Adam, and he became the father of the mighty men who lived before the flood. Note, Seth was born in supposedly in the 130th year of Adam's life, Genesis 5:3. Was it Genesis verse 3? Pretty sure that's 5:3. But the book of the B says it was the 23rd year, 230th year of Adam, and Seth and his sons dwelt on the top of Mount Eden, while Cain and his children lived on the plain below. The posterity of Seth. Into Seth was born Enosh or Enos, and Enosh begot Canaan, and Canaan begot Mahalalel. These different names. It's got here it's really hard to see because there's so many A's. Mahalalel. These are the patriarchs who were born in the days of Adam. The posterity of Seth, okay, the death of Adam. Okay, it says here, when Adam had lived 930 years, that's to say until the 135th year of Mahalalel, and so forth. Yeah, okay, so you got the Brita, the Aramaic Brita. Genesis in English, it says it's his lineage that lasted 903 years. Not that he lived 903 years. Think of it this way. Use your logic and common sense. Okay, in reality, people don't live that long. Especially if you didn't have medical advancement or all that sort of stuff. You'd have to rely on God, etc., etc. It had a healthy lifestyle, but it actually says in the Brita, or Genesis in English, that was how long his lineage lasted for. And then Seth takes over because he's the heir or the head of the family, firstborn, so he has these rights, and everyone else is subject to him until he has a son, okay, who then becomes the heir later on and takes over from there. He goes on about death of Adam, the rule of Seth, the rule of Enosh or Enos, and this is where it says that Lamech was hunting and he shot game. He thought he shot game, but actually Cain. He killed Cain, and he said to his son, "Oh look, oh my lord." Well, the boy said, "You've killed Cain." And Lamech moved his hands to smite them together, and as he did, he smote the youth and killed him also. Okay, so that's an arrow went in between the eyes of Cain. He fell down and died, and there's this young man with him, and apparently because he's witness to it, Lamech killed him. Was it a youth and possibly somebody else? Yeah, he killed him, and that's why he says to his two wives, Ada and Sela, or Sela, whatever their names were, look, I killed two men, one in his youth and an older man. Okay, the Book of Adam 2:30 says that Lamech was armed with a bow and large arrows and a sling and smooth stones. An arrow pierced one side of Cain, and a stone from Lamech's sling knocked out both his eyes. Lamech smote the youth who led him about accidentally, but afterwards he smashed his head in with a stone. There are many versions of the story in Arabic, Ethiopic and Hebrew, but they all agree in essential details according to the Book of the Bee, chapter 23. No, it's chapter 18 by the looks of it. The anvil and hammer and tongs were invented by Tubal Cain and Jubal, who also constructed musical instruments. harps and pipes. Devils lived in the pipes and sang therein. Yeah, because Satan supposedly, or Lucifer, had these musical pipes, etc., attached to him. Right? He used to make a hell of a lot of noise in heaven, apparently. That's probably why Lamech said, if somebody kills Cain, it said they'll pay 7 times 70 for doing that. But if he gets killed and someone avenges the death of Cain and kills him, it'd be like was it 7 times 700 or something like that, So I'm looking for when Seth Enosh and his descendants left their rightful place and chased the woman, right, of ungodly men. Okay, look at that. Okay, so here it is here. Yubal and Tubal-Cain, two brethren, sons of Lamech, the blind man who killed Cain, invented and made all kinds of instruments of music. Who's that? Tubal-Cain. Okay, something about when men blew into the pipes, the devil sang inside them and sent out sounds from inside them. Okay, they're the sister, tambourines and drums. And lasciviousness and fornication increased among the children of Cain, and they had nothing to occupy them except fornication. Now they had no obligation to pay tribute, and they had neither prince nor governor, no one ruling over them. And eating and drinking and lasciviousness and drunkenness and dancing and singing to instruments of music and the wanton sportings of the devils, and the laughter which affordeth pleasure to the devils, and the sound of furious lust of men neighing after women. And Satan, finding his opportunity in this work of error, rejoiced greatly, because thereby he could compel the sons of Seth to come down from that holy mountain. There they had been made to occupy the place of that army of angels that fell with Satan. There they were beloved by God. There they held in honour by the angels and were called sons of God. Even as the blessed David saith in Psalms, I have said, Paul shall be column 1, ye are gods, and all of you sons of the Most High. Psalms, whatever that is, maybe 52:6, not too sure to be honest. Yeah, so basically it says there that they were on top of this mountain and they're in the presence of God, and they saw the women of ungodly men were beautiful, so they basically took whoever they wanted because of this music and dancing and carrying on, according to this book. Meanwhile, fornication reigned among the daughters of Cain, and without shame several women would run after one man, and one man would attack another, and they committed fornication in the presence of each other shamelessly. For all the devils were gathered together in that camp of Cain, and unclean spirits entered into the woman and took possession of them. The old women were more lascivious, they say that word, lascivious, than the maidens, lascivious, than the maidens. Fathers and sons defiled themselves with their mothers and sisters, sons who respected not even their own fathers, and fathers made no distinction between their sons and other men. And Satan had been made ruler or prince of that camp, fold 12b, column 2. And when the men and women were stirred up to lascivious frenzy by the devilish playing of the reeds, which emitted musical sounds, and by the harps which the men played, of the reeds which emitted musical sounds, by the harps which the men played through the operation of the power of the devils, and by the sounds of the tambourines and the sitar, which were beaten and rattled through the agency of evil spirits, the sounds of their laughter were heard in the air above them, and ascended to that holy mountain. And when the children of Seth heard the noise and uproar and shouts of laughter in the camp of the children of Cain, or descendants of Cain. About 100 of them who were mighty men of war gathered together and set their faces to go down to the camp of the children of Cain. When Yared heard their words and knew their intention, he became sorely afflicted, and sent and called them to him and said unto them, By the holy blood of Abel I will have you swear that none of you, not one of you, shall go down from this holy mountain. Remember ye, or remember you, you'll remember. File 13a, column 1, the oaths which our fathers Seth and Enosh and Canaan and Malalael made you swear to. And Enoch said unto them, Hearken, O ye children of Seth, no man who shall transgress the commandment of Yared and break the oaths of our fathers and go down from this mountain shall never again ascend it. So once you go down, you're coming back. You can't come back up. But the children of Seth would neither hearken to the commandments of Yared nor to the words of Enoch, and they dared to transgress the commandment. And those 100 men who were mighty men of war went down to the camp of Cain. When they saw that the daughters of Cain were beautiful in form, and that they were naked and unashamed, the children of Seth became inflamed with the fire of lust. And when the daughters of Cain saw the goodliness of the children of Seth, they gripped them like ravening beasts and defiled their bodies. And the children of Seth slew their souls by fornication with the daughters of Cain. And when the children of Seth wished to go up again to that holy mountain, file 13a, column 2, after they had come down and fallen, the stones of that holy mountain became fire in their sight, and having defiled their souls with the fire of fornication, God did not permit them to ascend to that holy place, and moreover very many others made bold and went down after them, and they too fell. Note, this story is told at great length in the book of Adam 2:20. Satan appeared in the form of one Gunan and taught him to make horns and trumpets, stringed instruments, cymbals, psalteries, lyres, that's some sort of guitar, right? Harps and flutes. Into these Satan himself entered and made the music which came from them. Gunan made corn, spirit, so he made some sort of alcohol, right, out of corn, moonshine, and established drinking booths in which men assembled and drank and ate fruit. So that was your first bar, probably, and your bench where you got wasted. Then Satan taught Gunan to make weapons of war out of iron, and when the men were drunk, they killed each other with them. Next, Satan taught men how to dye their garments, or colour them, crimson and purple, and they arranged themselves in gaudy attire and began to race their horses. Little by little, the children of Seth began to wish to join the sons of Cain, and when the devils had shown them a way down the mountain, 100 of them went down to the plain and were led astray by the woman whose hands and feet were stained with bright colours and whose faces had tattoo marks on them. When the Sethites tried to return to the top of the mountain, the stones turned into coals of fire, and they could not pass over them. Company after company of the children of Seth went down to the plain, and at length only Yared and a few others remained on the mountain. The Ethiopic Book of Enoch, see the translations by Archbishop Lawrence Oxford, 1838, by Dolman Leipzig, 1853, and Canon Charles Oxford, 1893. Supplies interesting details about the fall of the children of Seth. The leaders of those who went down from Addis on Mount Hermon were Semyaza, the commander-in-chief, Uraki Baraimel, and so forth. Each of these was over a company of 10. The names of two of the Patriarchs of the 200 angels are omitted. We know about that. Okay. So, and the tradition in the Kibra and the Gast, I guess that's Ethiopian, says that the children were so large that they could not be born in the ordinary way. Okay, hang on. Okay, it claims here that angels took themselves wives, but apparently, according to Jewish rabbis, they don't have genitalia. So, okay, you see something about angels took to themselves wives and taught them the use of spells and enchantments and the use of plants and trees for medicinal purposes. The daughters of Cain conceived, and a tradition in the Kibra Nagast says that the children were so large that they could not be born in the ordinary way. but had to be removed from their mothers by the umbilicus. So that's the umbilical cord, right? These children grew up and became giants, 3,000 cubits in height, and when they had devoured all the provisions which their neighbours had collected, they began to fight against men and to eat them, and at length they ate the flesh and drank the blood of each other. Concerning these giants, the book of Enoch, chapter 15 says, Now the giants who were produced from the spirits and the flesh shall be called evil spirits on earth, and their habitation shall be on the earth. Evil spirits shall proceed from their bodies, and the spirits of the giants shall consume and persecute and lay waste and fight and work destruction on the earth and afflict men. They shall neither eat food of any kind nor suffer thirst, and they shall remain invisible. And these spirits shall attack the children of men and women, for from them they have come forth. Okay. Yeah, because you've got the Aramaic Beta that says these sons, these descendants of Seth, they were called the sons of God, the children of God, because they called upon the name of the Lord. Okay, they were in His presence, or that sort of thing. And then there's apparently in this Brita, there's a shock surprise to the translator, Victor Alexander, a native-born Mesopotamian Aramaic-speaking translator. When he translated the Brita into English, he was shocked surprised because it had this was it Genesis 1:27, where it says that God created pre-Adamics. So they were basically following the animal instinct. They didn't have the spirit or this sort of stuff. And God tells them, okay, go multiply, increase, etc. So off they went. So that makes a man, according to his theory of the Aborigines, not a complete human being. Okay, they're animal man. So that's why they power man. They want to kill each other, all that sort of stuff. And apparently we're hybrids of that interaction, okay, with the descendants of Seth, Enosh, okay, where they left their rightful place with God, not angels or anything like that, okay, because supposedly according to these rabbis they were created to do God's will. They don't have genitalia or that sort of stuff, so they can't breed with human women. They left their rightful place, and they saw that the ungodly pre-Adamics had these beautiful daughters, right? They were hot, okay, or reasonable to look at. So all these wax models in the museum where they look really hideous and unkempt and ugly, and if you put it that way, that's false. That's just an artist's impression. So they went for anyone they wanted, right? Took as many as they wanted. Okay, so they left their rightful place with God, and then their DNA, genetics, etc. are too close. So they had these weird-looking creatures, okay, who became giants. The giants of legend, and then later Roman, Greek myths, etc., etc. Like like the what do you call it? The orcs, and what's the other one with the one eye? Cyclops, and all of those ones, Greek mythology. Yeah, so their DNA, their genetics, etc. are too close because they're both humans. So one was made from God's image, the other was made from the dust. One was holy, one wasn't. Okay, well, one had the spirit and the presence of God, the other one didn't. Just animal man. So them intermingling caused side effects. So they had these strange creatures, hybrids, giants. Okay, freaks. Okay, who became of fame, of worldly fame of that particular location, right? And then probably lead to the Greek myths, etc., etc. So then they were full of lust, etc., like this book just said. Then they did anything they wanted, anything they could think of, right? Okay, two Cain, etc., had made things of iron, brass, or whatever, tools of brass, mentioned in the Bible. And then these men, in their drunkenness, because they created alcohol and liquor and all this sort of stuff, started doing anything, everything with whoever they wanted. There was just no holds barred. So get into a fight, drunk as, and they kill the other guy. Then that guy kills that guy. Just went on and on and on. That's why they just went totally out of control, which grieved God, right? There's just no one here to stop them. They didn't have any cops in those days, so anything went. Get with your sister, get with your brother, father gets with the brother gets with the mother, or anything you can imagine. They were doing it. So that's why the Christ says, in the last days it'll be like the days of Noah, right? It'll be just like so out of control, anything goes. That's how bad it's going to get. Okay, so probably up until that point, when it gets like that, then the Christ will return. And it just gets too much. Okay, so this is really, really interesting. An interesting book. Whether it's written by somebody in the 5th or 6th century, etc., trying to fill in the gaps. That's the thing, right? You've got to figure that out. You've got to do research and prove whether it is or not. But we found it very, very interesting. We hope that you feel the same. And if you like this, then simply subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments, and then go share it with everybody else you know.